You're listening to the All the Things podcast, and I'm your host, Sofia Merlo. Each week, you can expect tips and tricks from beauty to business experts, or from myself as I navigate life as a young woman in her 20s. Every episode is chock full of value, tangible advice, while still sprinkling in relatable stories and keeping things real with my guests and you listening. Be sure to subscribe and tune in every Thursday so you don't miss an episode. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to the All the Things podcast. Today I am joined by Nicki Cox Fit, as you know, on Instagram. Nicki, thank you so much for being here today. I'm thrilled and honored to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited. It's my first time on a podcast, so I'm super stoked.
Well, great. I really want to just dive right into the episode. So this first question, it might be a bit heavy. Everyone's listened to the intro, so you know what to expect with the content of this episode. But I really love your mission of being that crossroads of fitness, self-acceptance, food freedom. But with all that comes with your journey of having an eating disorder too. And myself having disordered eating, I really love that you're kind of a spokesperson on that recovery journey, that self-love journey. So I was wondering if you could give the audience a bit about that for yourself. So when did that start? What was your experience and whatnot?
Yeah. Well, thank you you're so sweet. I think like a lot of women, unfortunately, our relationship with our bodies and kind of that like turmoil starts at a really young age. So, I mean, I remember being like 7 or 8 years old and being like comparing myself to other girls in my class and thinking I was ugly and hating my body and all these things. And I look back and I'm like, I was 8 years old. Like, that's so sad. How did I even get that messaging? Because I also grew up in a home where it's like we didn't have a scale. Like, my mom never commented on my weight. So it wasn't like I was in an environment where my body was really being talked about. But I think it's just really about society as a whole and how much importance and impact we put on women's bodies, and we target that messaging towards older women, but like we're naive to think that young girls don't see that same messaging and think it applies to them too. You know, magazines in the grocery store, weight loss ads on the TV, like everything we see is just targeted towards women needing to be smaller and women needing to lose weight. And so pretty much by the time I felt like I was forming my sense of identity, those ideas were kind of already in my head. So I kind of definitely struggled with my body image ever since I was really young. But I really struggled in terms of like my eating disorder developing when I was around 13. So I was really young still, but not quite as young. And I honestly, the strangest thing for me is I think for most people with eating disorders, you can always kind of find a cause, you know, something traumatic usually happens in their life and they turn towards food for control, or someone says a comment to them, which then they kind of spiral. Like, there's usually a trigger, but I've never really been able to find what my trigger was. I think at the end of the day, it was just kind of, I'd been dealing with this for so long and I was 13. So you kind of start making choices at that age and rebelling a little bit and kind of really deciding to try and find your sense of identity. So because of that, I was like, okay, I just want to lose a little bit of weight. You know, I just want to lose a couple pounds, whatever. But I was at an age where I didn't understand how to do that healthily. So the only thing I knew was you eat less food. That's what you're supposed to do. And so that's what I did. But obviously, like I said, I didn't know how to do it healthily. And it just very quickly spiraled. And within about 9 months, at that point I was 14, so I was in 8th grade. Within 9 months, I had almost lost 40 pounds. And obviously, the mental health toll was even more impactful than the impact on my body. But my body literally started shutting down. I actually was hospitalized for a month, and the doctors pretty much told me that if I had not gone in the hospital when I did, I would have died within a couple days. So I think for me, what I've always found is that eating disorders are so prevalent in our society and amongst women especially, but they're not really talked about as much given how prevalent they are. Like, I think as women, we all can name so many other women we know that struggle with their relationship with eating disorders, but very little people actually talk about it. And so when I created my page, I really wanted to talk about that strange intersection of being like, okay, I now am able to exercise again and I love fitness and all these things, but it's so commonly linked to weight loss. So how do you navigate between having a really healthy relationship with fitness and, you know, just taking care of your body while also not letting it be fueled and, you know, inspired by like a weight loss journey? So I just created my page because I felt like there was kind of a gap in the social media fitness industry, I guess you could call it, where there just weren't people saying like you can do both without it like having this huge negative impact on your life.
Well, first off, thank you so much for just sharing your story and being so vulnerable. Even if it helps one person who's listening to this, I know that you're helping them in some way. And with your page, you're helping thousands of people. So just thank you, honestly, because like you said, I would challenge that it's even the more common for, again, especially women, but for people to have disordered eating disordered thoughts about food than it is for people to have a really healthy relationship with food or
100%.
exercise. And it's like this taboo thing still. I think it goes one of the extremes where you're either in this spectrum of having a healthy relationship or that poster child of what a lot of people, when they think of an eating disorder, that looks like.
Yeah.
But this gray space in between where I think the majority of people live.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think the statistic is like something absurd of like 1 in 5 or even less than that is what the statistic is for having, you know, disordered eating. But I mean, just from my experience of being a woman and being surrounded by other women, I am 100% sure it's more like 2 out of 3, like, you know, literally like 75% of the women I know, I would say, have had issues with, you know, their relationship with food. And that it's just so sad that many women are struggling with this, yet it's still a subject that is not often talked about. And I think because it's not talked about, people feel it's like an embarrassing thing and people are ashamed of it. And it's not something anyone should ever feel shame or embarrassment of. I remember, you know, when I got out of the hospital, I refused to tell everyone knew, obviously you could look at me and understand what was going on if you kind of had a concept of what eating disorders were. But for years, I never really told people what exactly had happened because I had just been so like, wait, I'm sorry,
that's okay. No worries.
So sorry.
No, all good. No worries.
Yeah, and so because I totally lost my train of thought.
That's all good. You were saying about how you didn't talk about for a while, but people could obviously see what was going on.
Yeah, people could, anyone that looked at me knew definitely what was going on, but I refused to ever tell people about it because I just thought that would make me less than, or it would be like this thing that like was wrong with me, when it's totally not. Like, these things are so tragically common, and I think the more we talk about it in open spaces, and, you know, I'm not saying casually it's not something you drop in casual conversation, but our relationship with food and exercise should be something that's made more casual. Like, we do need to start talking about how, you know, women are never properly introduced to the gym. They never are. And so by the time they start going, it's because they already want to change their body and because they hate their body, not because they want to go exercise for the actual benefits of it, you know? So I just think like those small topics like that is what need to be brought up more in everyday conversation.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I think the earlier, the better. Like you were saying, how you first became aware at a very young age, 7 or 8, about the changes of your body that you wanted to make or how your body looked in comparison to your peers. And I relate to that story as well. I remember a lot of people, I don't normally talk about this because for me, it's still a very embarrassing thing. Mm-hmm. But I was that kid in like kindergarten through, I would say about grade 4, that I was like the chubby fat girl. Mm-hmm. And then I swung the complete other direction and was the underweight girl for most of high school. Mm-hmm. But it's because of those things of, again, you don't have that knowledge to be like, what actually is healthy, what is maintainable. And if you're seeing whether it be older girls at your school or your social circle that are maybe going through disordered eating patterns, or people on magazines, if you don't have that introduction, it can be so detrimental. And I want this podcast to be a place where, whether you're a mom, an older sister, having some resources of how to incorporate that conversation to young people and even yourself to help gear you in a better direction. I think that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the mental toll. You touched on this, but whether you're losing or gaining weight, any relationship, again, with food and your body is so much more mental than it is physical. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that. Could you speak on that a bit? Whether some things that have helped you or some of the things you experienced mentally that people don't really realize?
Yeah, I think the tricky thing when it comes to eating disorders is you're killing your mental health. Like, that's dying as well as your physical body. Like, you are being attacked on every end of the spectrum. You know what I mean? So even when you're mentally feeling like, okay, I can do this, your body's still suffering. Like, the way that you are feeling mentally has a direct impact on your physical health. And that's the scariest part of these eating disorders. Like I said, I almost died from mine. Like, I frankly probably should have died from mine given where my health was at. Pretty much every part of my body was shutting down. Like, when I went to the hospital, they pretty much tested like all my organs, like everything, and everything was going into like shut down mode pretty much. You know what I mean? So I was really, really sick, and people don't understand that just because someone's sick, that doesn't mean that they want to get better. You know what I mean? I was sitting in the hospital and knowing that I was on the verge of dying, and I still had convinced myself that I didn't have a problem, that I didn't have an eating disorder, that like I was in full control, because you become so disconnected from reality. Like, your brain, it's truly like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. And I think anyone that has had an eating disorder, like, they'll understand. But if you've never had an eating disorder, you can't even understand what your like mental like health and frame is at, because it's so crazy. You truly have two brains. You have your true self, who is your identity, who it's you. It's all the things you care about, all the things you love, all the people, everything like that. But then you have your eating disorder. You have your ED brain, which when it gets to a certain point, that's the brain that's kind of in control and telling you what you're doing. And if that's the thing in control, every single thing you do is related to food, about being skinny, about losing weight, how to burn calories. Like, when that is the entire driving function of your life, which unfortunately it can become if it gets to that extreme, it's truly the most miserable way to live in the world. Like, I would not wish it on my worst enemy. You have constant anxiety and depression, and it is just like truly the worst thing in the world. Like I said, I would not wish it on my enemy. And it's just so complex because, like I said, you know, your body's deteriorating, but until you decide that you want to get help, it's only going to get worse. And I think that was the hardest thing for me, was the fact that even at my lowest, I thought I was fine and I didn't want to get help. So it's really not until that you mentally decide, okay, I actually want to get help, that things are actually going to get better, because you are in full control. No one can force you to eat the food. No one can force you to do these things. And so it really has to be just like that mental everyday battle of like, I actually want to do this. I want to get better. I will get better. And until you kind of reach that point, it's hard. It's an everyday battle. It is an everyday grind. So yeah, I mean, there's truly no ways to even describe how mentally exhausting it is, because it is so much more than food, and it's about control. And I don't think that's something a lot of people understand. Like, food becomes your biggest fear. Like, it's not even about the actual food anymore. It's about what you have made food a symbol of. You know what I mean?
It becomes so much bigger than itself. It's almost like an addiction, how, again, you have those two brains, and you have your authentic self, but then everything just succumbs and gets taken over by that other part of you. And I want to ask you too, I think this is important, because talking to someone with an eating disorder is another beast of its own. And whether it's your parents, your best friend, people that you trust, I feel like you lose trust in them when they try to help you, because it can often seem like they're trying to take something away from you when they're really probably scared and trying to help you. Do you have any advice? This wasn't a prep question, but if there's a parent or a best friend listening and they see someone they love going through an eating disorder, are there ways to approach them? In my mind, telling them to eat something that scares them or eat more is the worst thing that they can do, and will often make them go the other direction and make it worse. But do you have anything that you would say to those people?
I think the biggest thing is just telling them that, like, while you may not understand exactly what they're going through, that, like, you are there to help them. Because, and I also think going about it is extremely difficult. And I honestly I think there are some things you definitely shouldn't do. Like you said, don't say just eat. There's certain things that, like, you have to go into it doing some background research and really understanding the root of the problem, and, have a basic understanding of eating disorder, so you don't come to them and say just like, oh, well, just eat. Like, why can't you just, like, you look so skinny. Like, there's certain things like that you definitely want to stray away from, because, when you tell someone with an eating disorder, you look so skinny, that's fueling them. That's making in their brain, they're thinking, oh, I'm doing things well. I'm doing things correctly. Like, it's working. You know what I mean? But I think when you also approach the situation, you also have to expect turmoil, expect them to say they're fine, expect that rejection, and also expect your relationship to change a little bit for a little while. Like, it's been hard for me, but because I was the first person kind of in my friend group, or even honestly, like, in my high school, I feel like, to openly talk about having an eating disorder, I was always the person that people would come to when, like, someone else was struggling. And therefore I was the person that usually would try to approach a friend or someone like that was struggling and say, like, hey, I'm noticing these things and I'm just really worried about you. Like, let me know if I can do anything for you. And that usually had an impact on my relationship with the person. And you have to be willing to not sacrifice your relationship as a whole, but definitely change the dynamic of the relationship for a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's life or death. You know what I mean? You have to have those conversations. While yes, it could be awkward, and yes, it can change things and make things a little tough, if you don't have those conversations with people, they're never going to get help, potentially. And, like, you don't know that, like, you bringing it up to somebody could spark in them, like, the idea that, like, maybe these things aren't normal. Maybe I should get help. Like, just simply saying something could help more than it could. But you do have to be willing to sacrifice the fact that maybe your best friend is going to be a little bit of, like, a distant friend for a little bit, because she's uncomfortable with the fact that and that you're aware. But at the end of the day, that could save her life. That could help her. So that's something that needs to be done.
Exactly. And this is a really hard topic in general. I don't think there's any easy way to go about it. So it comes with the territory that if yourself or someone you love is experiencing this, it's not going to be an easy journey. That's not saying that you can't help or that you can't overcome these things, but you have to understand that it's probably going to take a while, and it's going to take a lot of patience and maybe some tough love on either end as well.
Yeah, and like you said, like, their whole identity is at that point probably rooted in their thinness and rooted in their relationship with food. So you're trying to take that away from them, and that's something they're going to be very defensive of, and that's something they're not going to want. That they're not going to easily come to terms with the fact that, like, maybe they have a problem. So, just go into it definitely ready for pushback, and definitely ready to just be like, you know what, I'm here for you. I might not understand, but, like, we're going to get through this. And you kind of have to give them a little bit of tough love sometimes, of just like, I'm not just going to drop this. Like, I'm not going to be a nuisance. I'm not going to, constantly be bringing it up, but I am going to check in on you every now and then. And I'm going to see how you're doing, because I care about you, and because I'm nervous and I'm worried. And you have every right as a friend to do that.
No, and thank you for saying that too, because I think this is just something that a lot of people don't understand, and that is scary, and especially if you're seeing someone go through it. I want to talk about now the other side, since you've been through that and on the other side. Do you ever have those thoughts come up again in your day-to-day life? And if so, what tools or strategies or even mindsets do you have to push those away and keep going on your healthy recovery path?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely still, have times where I struggle. I think we all have, bad body image days and things like that, but and recovery is lifelong, you know what I mean? And that's why you have to be so cognizant of everything you're doing, because recovery is lifelong, and you could slip whenever, you know what I mean? Like, it's sad, but it's true. Like, it is a lifelong recovery, like any other addiction or any other, thing that someone has to recover from. It is not something that just goes away. But I think what kind of helps me a lot is, while unfortunately I saw the very extreme of where eating disorders can go. That has kind of served as like my grounding point of like, I know that even if I go on this quest to lose weight, that's not going to make me happy. I know that weight loss and being thin, and even at my absolute thinnest, when you'd assume I'd be content and happy, because in our society we correlate happiness to thinness and being skinny and weight loss. I know that those things didn't make me happy. I actually know that when I was at my thinnest, I was at my worst. I've never been more miserable in my life. And I think the issue with weight loss, or at least in like, no, I'm not saying weight loss is inherently bad. You know, for some people it really does, you know, help them and make them happier and healthier. But it is so ingrained in us that we should be on this constant search for weight loss, and that's where things go wrong. You know what I mean? I think the issue is that there's neither self-gratification nor an end game. You can always be thinner, and because you can always be thinner, you're never happy or like with where you're at. And so because I know all those things to be true, and I've lived them and I've experienced it, I know that like I never want to go back there. So I don't even try. Like I couldn't really tell you the last time, like, I mean, for years, I've never tried to like actively lean out or lose a little bit of weight, because it's simply not worth it to me, because my body's fine the way it is. I don't need to change it. And I think just becoming very aware of how diet culture presents itself in everyday life has really helped me to understand that like the issue's not with me, it's with the world we live in. My body is totally fine the way it is. Just because I see messaging that tells me it isn't, doesn't change the fact that my body is perfectly fine the way it is.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And I want to kind of touch on what you said, that weight loss isn't inherently bad, because I think that's another important point, and that's not what we're saying with this. Mm-hmm. It's, again, this spectrum, and I think it's your intentions behind it
100%.
And what your goal is. And if your goal is coming from that ED brain, mm-hmm. like you said, you're never going to be satisfied. There's never going to be a goal weight. You're just going to drive yourself in this constant search until it becomes a life or death situation. Mm-hmm. But again, that's not saying that going to the gym, feeling good in your body, if that means losing a couple pounds mm-hmm. to be in a healthier weight class for yourself, those are not comparable. Yeah. Those are two different situations. And I think we live in a very interesting world where diet culture and body positivity both exist and both maybe have a place, but it's such either or. Mm-hmm. And it's trying to navigate as a young woman or just a young person where you fit in. But I think it always has to be rooted in your health, and whether you're having these thoughts or you have a goal, checking yourself and being like, how will this impact my health? How will this impact my relationships with my loved ones, with myself, mm-hmm. before you embark on whatever Instagram fitness challenge or whatever it is you see.
Yeah. And I think that's been something I've definitely struggled with, just even with like my social media, is like I'm presenting fitness content, but I'm also, a large majority of my audience is people that have struggled with their relationship with food and their body and eating disorders. So it's that thin line of promoting exercise, but it's also, but also doing it in a way that lets people know that like I'm promoting this in a way that is solely rooted in feeling good in your body, not because of how your body looks like, or what your body looks like, but because of the benefits of exercise. Like, I recovered fully when I found weightlifting, because for me, weightlifting was the first time that I started to view my body as strong. I stopped caring about just being at my smallest, and I started to love seeing my body grow. And in so many other instances in my life, whenever I grew in any area in my body, I was mortified. I just wanted to shrink. I wanted to be small. But when I found weightlifting in the gym, it was the first time where my legs got bigger and I was happy. You know what I mean? So it was really a great thing for me. And so that's the message I definitely try to promote, is the fact that, the gym can be really fulfilling, and it doesn't have to be a place of discomfort where you go because you don't like yourself. It can be a place where you go because you want to appreciate your body. And so there is a very fine line, though, between how do I present that type of content while people also not getting the messaging of like, I need to be going to the gym 24/7, all these things, because I think like fitness social media and like fitness TikTok is just so intense. Like it's so dramatic. Like you see these videos all the time and it's like, you're lazy on your couch, get up, you know what I mean? And it's like, they're supposed to be these motivational like TikToks, but they just make people feel horrible about themselves. So I think it's really just about accessible fitness as a form of self-appreciation and self-love, but not because you're like, I'm so lazy, I haven't gone to the gym today. You know, like you need to listen to your body. That's what it should be at its core. At all of our cores, we crave exercise. We want to move our bodies. Like that's at human nature. We release endorphins when we exercise because we like it. You know what I mean? So it's really about getting to the root of why we're exercising and why we should exercise.
Well, you do, I must say, a beautiful job of walking that fine line and showing on your page how exercise can add benefit to your life and be used as a way to appreciate your body versus using it as a way to hate your body or to like burn off whatever you ate. I never once got that impression from your page. So thank you for creating that space on the internet. And I want to talk about now a bit moving out of your eating disorder to walking to where you are present life. And you were, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 6 or 7 years you were vegan and you recently introduced a bit of animal-based products in your meals. And I want to talk about that because I think the vegan society is so like cutthroat too.
Yes.
But I think we're on the same page where we're all about listening to your body and doing what's right for your body. And that's exactly what you did. You listened to your body. Can you speak about that, of having that transition too?
Yeah, so I went vegan, like I think my sophomore year of high school. I'm 22 now. I'm a senior in college. So I was vegan for a very long time and I honestly really loved it. I did it for more, environmental, ethical reasons more than anything. And I still eat, 75% plant-based. I always will try to have that be like the base of my quote unquote diet. But I think there's such a pressure nowadays to follow a diet, follow something, and people don't understand. And when we do that and we put, veganism and paleo and keto and all these things into boxes, it makes it so much more complex than it needs to be. And it deters people from, vegans, their goal is to have a lot of people eat plant-based. But when you make it so intense and make people feel like they can never stray outside certain lines, people are less likely to even try eating 25% plant-based. And so when I stopped being vegan, it was a really hard thing because I felt like I had failed. I felt like if I'm not vegan, I'm not helping the environment, I'm not doing all these things. And I had to remind myself that doing anything is something. Even if you're just not eating meat a couple times a week, that's better than eating it every day. Like there's such a spectrum to it of like, it's okay to like eat in a way that you enjoy and that fuels your body and like that your body responds positively to. My body was happy being vegan for 7 years. I thrived on a vegan diet, but over this past year, due to stress and other things, my hormones got completely out of whack. And I missed my period. And then I started having my period like 4 times in 1 month. And I was super bloated and angry. And like my hormones were so messed up. And through a bunch of research, it pretty much said that I needed to eat long chain omega-3s, which is pretty much only found in fish. And I kind of just had that moment of like, who am I if I preach about listening to your body and doing all these things, yet I'm so consumed with like following this perfect quote unquote diet to a T of veganism that I'm not going to actually listen to my body when it's telling me it desperately is out of whack. And so it was definitely a strange transition, eating fish, but I feel great. My hormones regulated and, I have energy and I'm not miserable all the time like I was and bloated and all these things. So I think it really is, again, just another testament too of like, if you actually listen to the things your body is telling you, it will respond. If you listen to what it's saying and you do what it's asking you to do, that's all you need to go by. And whether that's with changing your diet or whether that's with exercise, like just listen to your body. It's gonna give you what you need.
No, seriously. And I think it's easy to get out of tune with what your body's telling you by trying to follow something super to a T and putting a label on how you eat or what your diet is, I say this all the time, and I think there's a diet that works for every body. But
So,
even if you had two experts in the same room, they're going to disagree on
mhm.
how someone should be eating. And then the patient or whoever they're talking about should be eating is probably going to have a third option that is best for their body. And
Mhm.
you really have to do your research, but then also what works for your body and listen to
Mhm.
that, not try and get on whatever is trending or whatever the people at your gym are doing. You have to be in tune, and it takes practice. But again, it's something that I think is great to be promoted of not a specific diet, but listening to your body.
Yeah, and not even just listening to your body too. Like, create a life that like you genuinely like and that you're happy with. You know, if you love cheese, if cheese brings you more joy than anything else in this world, don't feel the pressure to go vegan. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe you eat again 75% plant based, but every weekend you allow yourself to have a charcuterie board and cheese. You know what I mean? Like, everything needs to be done in balance that makes your body happiest and just you happy in general. Like it's almost like when I talked about an eating disorder earlier, like how your mind and your body are so in sync with it. Like, as your mind deteriorates, so does your body. The same can be said for every aspect of life. You know what I mean? When your mind is happy and you're doing things that actually bring you joy, your body's going to respond in the same way. So, yeah,
That's like
obviously
that.
listen to your body, but also listen to your brain when it comes to food. Like, it's okay to just like eat food that you crave and that you want and that sounds good, you know?
No, absolutely. And I think there's like a nourishing aspect of food, of course, but then like a soul aspect
Yes.
of food too. And
And
I relate to
they're
those.
just as important. They are just as important.
Yes, because otherwise, why are you doing it? Like, you need to have joy and fun in your life in all aspects, and food is such a social thing too.
Mm-hmm.
There's these TikToks, and I feel like a lot of the listeners relate, and I think it's to a Gossip Girl sound, but it's like when people try and figure me out that I have no dairy, but then I
Yeah.
devour an entire cheese board, and it's like, you know
Yeah.
what? Sometimes you just need to do what feels right and
Yeah.
whatever brings that joy in the moment.
100%. Yeah. And like you said, food is so social and it's something that really does bring people together so much. And that's, you know, I experienced a point of life where I missed out on so many things and I didn't go to so many things because I was afraid I was going to have to eat there or because it was just too much for me to be in situations with that type of food. And so I missed out on so many years of my life when I was a teenager because of that. Birthday parties, like events, like things that I should have gone to, but I didn't because I was afraid of the food. And so now I'm just at a place where I'm like, I'm never not gonna be like, yeah, let's order some sushi. My boyfriend's like, oh, do you want to get takeout? I'm like, yeah, let's do that because I don't want to miss out on any more. And food is social and food brings people together and it's delicious and I enjoy it. So, I think just like you said, there's a nourishment aspect of food, but there's also like so much more that it can do for you than just give your body fuel.
No, absolutely. I want to transition a bit to more the fitness side because
Yeah.
you offer both so well. And I think a lot of people listening are interested in fitness, but they're not at the point where they would feel 100% confident going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So for yourself, was it 4 years ago or was it longer now when you started weightlifting?
Oh gosh. I want to say it was my senior year of high school. So I guess that would be like what, four-ish years ago. That's when I first like started weightlifting, but I wasn't serious about it at all. That's when I first just like started doing it.
Right.
And so yeah, I had, so my relationship with my eating disorder was very strange, I would say, and I kind of have to preface my fitness journey with that because, like I said, I was hospitalized, so I had to go into recovery because medically, pretty much, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I was medically at a place where, okay, I had to go to the hospital, so then legally I had to then go to therapy and all these things. So even though that all started when I was 14, I was battling eating disorders and anorexia and a bunch of other stuff for probably like 3 or 4 years post the hospital because
Wow.
I was not ready to recover when I was in that situation. I was kind of just forced into it. And like I said, you really have to want to recover to get better. So I, struggled for a long time. And then when I was 18, after, spending my whole life pretty much doing cardio, I actually had a trainer at the gym that my mom was friends with, and my mom was like, could you like maybe just show Nicki a couple moves? You know what I mean? Just show her how to like shoulder press, dumbbell squat, like a couple like small little things and some machines. And so she showed me how to do a couple things. We had a couple little sessions, and I really enjoyed it. And it was a very, very slow transition. I pretty much went from going to the gym and just doing like an hour of cardio to then being like, okay, I'll do 30 minutes of cardio and 30 minutes of like these little leg extensions and leg machines and stuff. I prioritize cardio still, but I added in some weightlifting. And then over time, I was like, okay, I'm actually going to do weightlifting first and then cardio. And after probably like a year or so, it phased out of where I was going to the gym to lift and then would occasionally do some cardio. So it wasn't like an instantaneous click of like, I tried it and I loved it. No, I was still very much attached to a cardio and under the impression that like I needed to do cardio because I wanted to be small. But as I got more into weightlifting, my mindset started to change, and I started to see like, wait, like I have a small little booty now. Like this is crazy. Like, oh my gosh, I love this. And then as I got more confident weight training, my whole mental mindset shifted. I think one of the greatest things about weightlifting too is the fact that like if you want to make progress in the gym, you have to eat a lot. Like you have to be giving your body that many calories. So when I started to be like, oh, I really like gaining muscle, I really enjoy this, I then also had to understand like, okay, well now I need to start eating more. And then I became okay with eating more. And then it all just kind of came full circle. And I was like, this is so great. I feel strong. My body's awesome. Like I'm so powerful and capable. And I'm eating all this stuff and I'm not scared of it anymore. So it just really became, it took time. It wasn't, like I said, I didn't enter the weight room and immediately everything went away. But as I grew in the gym, my mindset shifted a lot too.
I'm truly so happy listening to your story. I relate a lot. I started of like going for runs literally 5 to 6 days a week and would cry if I couldn't fit that run in because I felt like I was failing. And now going through prioritizing weight, and I think a lot of people will relate too. Mm-hmm. But it's so powerful when you enjoy seeing your body change in a way that would be like traumatizing a few years ago. Yeah. And to hear you go through that process literally just makes me happy because I know there's so many people listening, whether they're going away to college soon or they're living up by themselves and have a lot of fears surrounding the changes of their body, that no, you can actually develop and change your body in a way that you didn't even imagine and be so confident and so healthy. So I'm just happy hearing you talk about it because I think a lot of times when you see a YouTuber, they didn't have this story. You just see the final product of things. Yeah. You don't see that transition.
Yeah, no. And I think another thing to keep in mind too, for anyone that's new to weightlifting that maybe is scared to try, like I was terrified when I first did it. Like, you will feel uncomfortable and that's normal. But like anything in life, there's never going to be a moment where you're like, I'm finally ready. Like you're always going to be a little scared, a little skeptical, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, And I think people often think when they're in the gym and they don't know what they're doing, oh my God, everyone's looking at me. Like everyone knows I'm a beginner. Trust me. Everyone at the gym is very focused on themselves. Yeah. Like everyone is there because, they're checking themselves out in the mirror. Like they aren't really paying attention to other people. And if anyone is going to judge you at the gym while we're all there to better ourselves, every single person in the gym, no matter if they're 5 days into their quote unquote fitness journey or 5 years in, they are all there to better themselves. And because they enjoy it and they are in that space because it makes them happy. And so if they're going to judge anybody else in the gym for doing exactly what they're doing, just at a different time frame in their life, that's on them. If it, like anything in life, if someone's judging you, that's not your problem. You don't have to deal with that. So kind of get away from that mindset of like, people are going to know that I'm new. Yeah. Who cares? Who cares if people know that you're new? Like you're there, show up for yourself, and it gets easier each time you're there. Each time you're there, something clicks and you're like, wait, this is how that movement's supposed to feel. And you feel amazing. And it's such an accomplishing thing. And I think as women, there's so many things in life that people will try to take away from us and that people will try to discredit and downplay. But when you're in the gym and you know that every time that you push for that extra rep, every increase in weight, every little thing you do is entirely an accumulation of your hard work. And nobody can take credit for that ever, because it's all you. And it is genuinely like the most confidence boosting thing in the world. And that's why, I mean, I just went on to preach about why I think women should do it. You know what I mean?
But no, that's awesome. And do you have any tips, like really tangible tips? And this could be promote yourself too. You have great things on your Instagram, even for free to people to watch. But if someone knows they want to go to the gym, but they're just terrified, do you have like 3 quick tips to help them get their butt in the gym and just feel a bit more confident about starting their workout journey?
Yes, I would say the number one thing is going with a plan. So Instagram and social media is a great tool. Find a ideally dumbbell only workout that you want to try. And before going to the gym, I would recommend looking up some like form tips on it. So find a little short dumbbell only exercise, look up maybe some form tips on each of the exercises listed. That'd be my first tip, going with a plan. Second tip, wear something you're comfortable in, so confident in. Obviously, that differs per person. I wasn't comfortable wearing a sports bra and leggings for years at the gym. I just wasn't. It took a long time for me to get there. So maybe if you're not comfortable doing that, wear sweatpants and a baggy t-shirt. Like, wear whatever makes you feel confident. On the other hand, if you feel good and like you're like you love yourself and like you're confident and you want to like show off your body, wear that sports bra in a leggings or shorts or whatever it is. Like, wear whatever makes you feel the most confident and like you can walk in there and own that place. So number 1, go with the plan. Number 2, wear something you're confident in. Number 3 would be like find a secluded corner or somewhere in the gym that isn't as scary and bring your exercise equipment to that corner. So a lot of times this could be like a studio room, like where they do the workout classes. This could literally be like near the stretching area. It could just anywhere you can find kind of a quieter space that maybe isn't in the free weight section with all, the men around you. That's kind of intimidating. Go there and just like, grab maybe 2 sets of dumbbells, bring your stuff there and just do your little workout.
Those are great tips. And that's something I wish I heard when I was starting. The first time I ever went to a gym that wasn't like my parents' basement set up, I literally had a panic attack because I was so worried.
Yeah.
I think I was probably in like 12 or 13, maybe, like very young. But on that note, do you have something that you wish someone told you when you were younger? It could be related to health and fitness or just in general, something you wish someone told you.
I think I wish someone told me that there is like strength in vulnerability. Like, there is power in your story. It is okay to be vulnerable. You should try to be vulnerable, because I think at the end of the day, if we were all a lot more open about how we're feeling, about what we've been through, I think the world would be it would be a much better space. I wasn't vulnerable about what I went through for a very long time. And when I started to be more vulnerable, I healed a lot and I found a lot of comfort in that. And there's no shame in who you are and the things you've been through. And oftentimes that vulnerability can help you connect with other people. That's pretty much my entire page, is just people that have been through similar instances that now found a space of other people that have been through those instances, and they can find comfort and solace in that. So, vulnerability is an amazing thing and it's a powerful thing. And we shouldn't shy away from it. I wish more people, knew that it was okay to just be authentically you and your experiences.
Yeah, so many times the things that isolate us or that we're ashamed of, that we don't want to speak about, are things that can connect us too. And I don't think anyone truly understands how many people are going through the same experiences as them, whether it's related to what we're talking about with health or fitness or something completely different. There's so many human experiences that aren't great, but that should be talked about and that can connect you to your community or friend group, that hopefully podcasts and your page and all the resources and things we have out there help facilitate those conversations. But I love that you said vulnerability, because I think it is something that we still shy away from.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, you spilling your trauma onto someone. Like, that doesn't have to be vulnerability can be as simple as expressing how you're feeling in a moment. Like, my relationship with my parents after having my eating disorder, obviously my household became a lot more open. I had to sit down in front of them frequently and tell them, how I was doing and how I was feeling. And so we learned in my household to talk about our feelings as we're feeling them. And, I'm not saying we didn't do that before, but my family is now extremely open about our mental health. And I don't think a lot of families are, which is really sad. And so vulnerability doesn't mean, sharing, I share my trauma on the internet. You don't have to do that. That doesn't have to be what you do. But it does mean when you're feeling a certain way or you need help, talking to someone, talking to your parents, like not shying away from having those awkward conversations. Vulnerability doesn't have to be this daunting thing. It can be small things in everyday life where you're just opening up to people, which in turn creates a much happier life. It can have big ripple effects.
I love that you're open with your family about mental health too. That's so important and amazing. And I think has also really set you up for success in just whether it's your page or school. You have so much going for you. And I think without being able to be open with people you trust, it would be a burden as well.
No, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, earlier too, when I talked about, when I started sharing my story, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders and I felt so much happier. It's so true. You know what I mean? Talking about things is simple at its core, but it can do so much for you just by, talking about it with other people.
No, absolutely. I want to transition a bit more to present day. And like I was just saying, you're in school, you have this really successful page, you fit in your workouts, you cook, you have so much going on and it can seem overwhelming for people. So do you have non-negotiables like a morning routine or things in your schedule that set you up for a productive day?
Thankfully, and this is not by my doing, I'm just naturally a morning person. So luckily I have my natural body clock wakes up at 6 a.m. So it's a lot easier for me to roll out of bed and get a workout in. Whereas some people think that's wow, you wake up so early, dude. I'm I don't have a choice. I'm either up at 6 and I'm just scrolling on TikTok for hours, or I'm up at 6 and I might as well go get a workout in. But I would say I've definitely, especially I'm in my final semester of college, so it's been and I'm working, so there's a lot going on. I feel my days I need a couple more hours, and 24 isn't quite enough. But no matter how busy the day gets, I do, at least on the days that I work out, I make sure I get a workout in, because even though it might add that little extra crunch on time, if the rest of my day is just filled with school and work and homework and doing all these different things, I know at least that I had an hour of doing something that was for me and something that I really enjoyed and something that made me happy. And so fitness for me is just that time to reflect, a time for myself. I just can get lost in my thoughts, think about everything I want to do for that day, and just really de-stress. I think exercise can be stressful for people thinking about cramming it in, but it's kind of the opposite for me. So that's definitely my biggest non-negotiable, is that's how I show up for myself. And so I make sure I do that every day, no matter how busy I am, because I enjoy it. I also really like cooking. I love cooking. I'm, again, lucky that I enjoy cooking, because I think when you don't enjoy cooking, it can be a little bit hard to eat quote unquote healthier meals. So I make 3 solid meals a day. I make sure I have time for that. But yeah, there's nothing really complex. I wish I was someone that journaled and did a bunch of stuff like that, but I've tried and it just doesn't stick. So I make my meals. I have my protein oats in the morning and my cup of coffee, which always brings me joy right when I wake up. And that's kind of it.
I think I want to talk about what you touched on, that you wish you journaled and things, because there's that girl aesthetic.
I hate that girl aesthetic.
Oh my God, thank you.
I despise it more than anything. I think it is just the most superficial, fraudulent thing in the world. And it's also, it just promotes wealthy, thin people. That's not our lives. Our lives don't look like that all the time. My room is a mess right now, and guess what? I'm still that girl. I'm that girl because I choose to show up for myself. That girl does not mean, being quote unquote that girl does not mean you drink green juices every day and you journal and you have a super aesthetic life. Being quote unquote that girl means that you're prioritizing yourself, that you're doing things that make you happy. And that's what being that girl is. You are that girl. You know what I mean? There is no aesthetic to being that girl. And I think it really promotes an unobtainable standard of health, which is just this idea that like you need to go to $100 Pilates classes and drink $7 green juices. And like, that's not obtainable for people, you know, like health needs to become more accessible. And I think a lot of people don't even care to start exercising or eating in a way that like makes them feel good from the inside, because it seems like such an upheaval of their life. Like if you start working out and you start trying to eat healthy, that means you have to become obsessed with working out, and you have to only eat healthy from then on out. It's like, no, we can have a balance. I eat pizza and I also eat salads, and I work out, but I also take rest days. Like the that girl trend, I really can't with it.
If you take anything away from this episode, I want it to be that little bit there, honestly. Because I think what you said too, I would challenge those people that show up on your TikTok page with the perfect that girl aesthetic. How many of them on a Friday or Saturday night are like going through Jewel pods like it's nobody's business, and crying in the club about something stupid, and like are underfueling their bodies? Like there's just so much toxicity with that trend.
Social media is so curated. It is all curated, and people really need to look at things with a very critical eye of understanding that like what you see on social media, no matter how vulnerable you think an influencer is and how authentic she is, it is never the full picture of someone's life. And so do not, it is this most cliche saying in the world, but like, don't compare your life to somebody else's highlight reel. Like it is just not the same. So don't even go there.
Yeah. No, and it's easy to do, so I'm glad you said that. I want to skip over this question because I think you answered it really well. I had, what would you say to someone who's just overwhelmed with a workout plan? I think your 3 tips really nailed that. So I'm just going to go on to the next one, if that's okay. I don't know if you have them in front of you or anything.
Of course.
But I want to ask you, what fuels your dedication? You were saying you naturally are a morning person and love to cook, so that obviously helps. But I think it's normal for people also to get burnt out, and comes a point where motivation isn't enough. You have to be dedicated. There's not every single day where you feel like getting your homework done, going to the gym, being a good friend. You have to be dedicated and also want to do those things. Do you have things that drive you?
Yeah. I think the key is that I'm not dedicated to changing my body. I'm dedicated to my health. And that's what I'm dedicated to. I think it's a lot harder to get out of bed and go work out when it's fueled by self-deprecation. Yeah. When you are only fueled by wanting to change yourself and not because you're like, I get to do this and this is good for me, it's a lot easier to lose that motivation. But when you have that positive reinforcement and exercise isn't surrounded by all these negative connotations and stress and anxiety, it can be a lot easier to be dedicated and stay motivated because, like you said, I very rarely am like, let's go. I'm so excited to go work out at 7 a.m. Like, it's tough. It's cold where I live. Like it's snowy. You don't always have that sort of dedication. But I think you always know. I always try to go into every workout thinking like anything I do is better than if I did nothing. So even if I get in there and I walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes and I do 2 exercises, well, it's better than if I did nothing, so, and usually when you get in there, you're going to do more than 2 exercises. The hardest part of going to the gym is the act of going to the gym, it's getting there. But once you're there, you find a lot more motivation. You're like, okay, I might as well do it. I'm going to get it done. Like you want to do it. You're surrounded by people doing it. So you're like, all right, I'll get this done. The hardest part is just getting there. Once you're there, it's easy. But like I mentioned earlier, I think the reason I work out is what keeps me motivated more than anything is just the fact that it's not a dreadful chore for me. It's something that I genuinely really enjoy doing.
I love that mindset switch of I have to versus I get to.
Yeah.
And I think also if you're listening to this and going to the gym just isn't your thing, there's so many other types of exercise to do, whether that's, I was a dancer for most of my life, so whether that's going to a dance class or another type of group fitness, or if it's nice where you live weather-wise, going outside for a walk or a hike, just doing things that, again, focus on moving your body and being healthy versus trying to do specific exercises to look a certain way is going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, and if you're burnt out, it's okay to take time off. You know, I've had weeks where I'm like, I am not enjoying this, so I'm going to take a week off. And then I don't work out for a week, and I come back, and I'm like, that was so great, and I'm really happy I took that week off because now I'm really excited to work out again. Or if you don't want to take a week off, try doing other things, like you said. Like when I was home, I'm from Seattle, Washington originally, and there's so many like mountains and outdoor things to do. And one of my favorite activities in the world was going on a hike. Like whenever I didn't want to go lift weights or work out, I would just go on a hike instead because I always loved it. I was always in nature. It was a really peaceful, like wonderful experience for me. So, you know, you don't have to put yourself in a box of like working out is only weightlifting, working out is only running, working out is only doing these things. Switch it up if you need to switch it up, if you're bored, or take time off. Like anything in life, exercise is like your motivation to exercise is going to ebb and flow. And some points in your life, maybe it's going to be the most important thing in your life. And other times it might be fifth on the list. Right now, for me, exercise is like fourth on my list because I'm graduating in a couple months. I have a job. I'm stressed with other things. Like, you know, I have other things that are taking more priority or necessarily that I'm diverting more energy into. But that doesn't mean I'm like not working out. It's just like maybe I'm only going for 45 minutes. Maybe I'm taking a couple more rest days than I usually do a week. You know, it's, you know, don't expect your relationship with exercise to be always at a constant because it's most likely not going to be.
No, that's so true. And it doesn't have to, again, it doesn't have to be that all or nothing mentality. You can customize it so that it's part of your life and it's part of who you are and what you value. But it's, like you said, something's better than nothing. You don't have to go for an hour, 5 to 7 days a week for you to be fit and healthy. If that looks like half an hour, 2 days a week, because that's all you can fit in and that's your mental capacity, that's great.
That's so great. Yeah. And yeah, exercise doesn't have to be this thing where you like leave the gym dripping in sweat. Like it's okay to go on a walk. That counts. You know, like things like that count. Doing some yoga in your room counts. Like I said, just don't put yourself in a box of like, this is what I include as exercise and these things aren't. Just, you know, make it fit your life, make it structure your life. Because again, like anything in life, it's about just being happy. It's about creating routines that you enjoy. It's about eating foods you enjoy. Like it all, again, is moving towards the same thing. And that's just creating a life that you actually are happy about and enjoy.
No, absolutely. And Nicki, thank you so much for your time and coming on the podcast. And before you go, I have one final question that I ask everyone. And that is, do you have a product, a resource, tool, literally anything that you love and that you want to recommend to the listeners?
Am I allowed to recommend therapy? Because I think,
yes.
I think that's big. I'm a very firm believer in the fact that everyone at some point in their life probably needs or should go to therapy. So I'm going to go ahead and say therapy would be my thing. But if not that, on a more like fun level, I guess you could say, the show Peaky Blinders. If anyone doesn't watch that show, it's in their final season. Tommy Shelby is the love of my life. He has my heart forever. It's a great show. It's like very strange. It's like a mix of like the mobsters, but also like these like Irish or Irish English men. It's very strange, but it's really, really good. So I highly recommend it.
I think those might be my favorite answers yet.
Thank you.
We love therapy here on All the Things. We're huge promoters of it. And Peaky Blinders is literally, I think, my boyfriend's top show ever. They have like a whiskey or something as well. Like, yeah. No, that was great.
The thing is, Peaky Blinders fans, like, everyone that watches the show is like obsessed with the show. Like it really takes on like a different thing for the people that watch it. So highly recommend. Each season is only like 8 episodes or something. So it's pretty doable.
Oh, you can get through that quick.
Yes.
Well, before you go, where can everyone find you? Pimp yourself out.
Yes. My Instagram is just Nicki Cox Fit, NICKI. And then COX is my last name. And then my TikTok is just Nicki.Cox.
Amazing. Well, Nicki, thank you again. I'm truly so honored to have you on the podcast and just love talking with you. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much. I had the best time. This is a wonderful first podcast experience.
Great. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thanks.